If you are hunting trouble, lad, you found it!
Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to another video. In this video, I'm going to be doing a really sort of quick and easy rating of the Spies Arsenal in TF2. You know, a little tier list, casual tier list. You know, from my cumulative almost 5,000 hours of gameplay, I'm just going to give you guys what I think about Spies weapons as they currently are as of recording of this video, which will probably never be changed because you know, Valve doesn't update the game. In the tiers we have are S, A, B, and C. No D tier because I don't think I'm not gonna make a whole tier just for it to be just the red tape recorder. I think it's a little bit redundant. You know what I mean? but yeah, let's get right into it. This is gonna be in no particular order, by the way. So the first weapon we have here is the red tape recorder for Spy, which is a sapper replacement. Which, yeah, it's like the sapper but bad. Instead of destroying buildings straight out, it deconstructs them very slowly, which takes, I think I think it was 7 or 8 more seconds to do fully than stock. And it's like really, really useless compared to regular stock sapper, right? Literally, its only niche, I'm pretty sure, is, its only niche is being better against mini sentries because it takes a lot longer to destroy them. And if the engineer isn't there to, you know, whack it off a sentry, he's gonna have to wait a long while to build a new mini sentry. So it's good for that, but other than that, it's terrible. So yeah, right into C tier. The next weapon on the list is the Your Turner Award, which has multiple gimmicks. The main one being that whenever you backstab somebody, you automatically disguise as them without any puff of smoke or any sound. The secondary gimmick being the silent killer effect, which makes it to where the enemy does not scream, their body instantly disappears, and they are not shown as being killed on the kill feed on their, you know, from their team's perspective, right? The big downside is that you have I think it's 30% cloak drain rate, which is nuts and like absolutely overkill for like a downside and does not make the knife worth using at all. Just that stat, honestly. Like, I don't even mind your cloak meter being eaten whenever you disguise because, you know, you should be punished for disguising when you have the knife. That's the whole point, is to make you disguise. Honestly, I think you should be punished for that, but the downside of the cloak drain is just nuts. Like, it doesn't belong on the weapon. It neuters it completely. I think it's fine for chain stabbing and getting into engineer nest, but it's like having to deal with both the cloak drain and having all your cloak taken away whenever you want to actually disguise without having a target. Yeah, it's looking pretty bleak for the Your Turner Award, so that's going right into C tier. So the next weapon on the list is going to be the Ambassador, which is a revolver for Spy. Basically, it gives you crits on headshot, which does up to 102 damage when you're really close to a target. And yeah, I remember the pre-Jungle Inferno version used to be so much better. I remember using it a lot. It was Spy's Pocket Op, you know, his killer app. Like one of the best counters to Sniper in the game. You know, back when they actually wanted you to be able to counter Sniper instead of just walk into a sideline and die to him immediately. And yeah, it's just, they neutered it so hard. They made the fall off extremely punishing. Like, if you're more than 15 feet away, you're not going to be getting the full 102. And the amount of damage you'll be doing is, like, minimal in comparison to the amount of damage you can do with just regular revolver body shots. Or, you know, using the other revolvers, right? You don't really get many upsides out of it, and it's more of just, you know, skill expression for the sake of skill expression rather than being something that's inherently useful to have on you. You know, compared to the other revolvers with their respective damage or utility roles, right? So that's why Ambassador's going right into C. I know, like, Spy mains are gonna hate me, but it's like, you guys just, you know, the gun hasn't been good since Jungle Inferno came out, man. Like, I don't know why you guys are still on it. Besides, oh yeah, I got that sick quick scope in my Spy montage. Like, man, I could have got that as a random crit with my stock revolver. You aren't very impressive by killing a light class that would have died in 2 revolver shots anyway, you know what I mean? But yeah, the Ambassador goes right into C tier. Alright, the next revolver on the list is the Enforcer, which has bonus damage when you're disguised. I think 20% bonus damage when you are disguised and you shoot while disguised. But it has, I think, slower firing speed. And I'm not going to have the stats pulled up, by the way, for like any of these because, you know, I'm just trying to remember from gut feeling. You know, it's just casual video. Sorry for the misinfo. But yeah, you get bonus damage upon disguise, and it also ignores damage resistances. So stuff like the Vaccinator, the Fist of Steel, the Wrangler for the Sentry too, which is actually useful against Wrangler engineers. And also, yeah, it goes through Dead Ringer also. So if you're having trouble as a spy against a Dead Ringer spy, genuinely consider taking the Enforcer because it will give you that leg up above him, you know. But yeah, what do I think about it? It's just too niche, honestly. It's too niche of an upside. Like, rarely will you get in a position where you're fighting a Fist of Steel Heavy or Vaccinator Medic, right? With something that isn't, you know, backstabbing them and killing them instantly with a backstab, right? You know, it just seems, it's just too situational of a weapon to really ever be useful. Like, the disguise damage bonus is nice, but when are you ever going to use that? When are you ever going to open up a fight like that? Unless you're caught out and then you intentionally disguise before that medic instantly kills you with an Uber Saw crit. You know, it's pointless. It is a pointless upside. It doesn't do anything for you. So that's why it's going right into the C tier. Alrighty, the next item is the Disguise Kit, which, the Disguise Kit is a very divisive item. And I have to say, for this whole tier list, Spy is a very polarizing class to play, okay? It's very heavily dependent on both the map and the skill level of the enemy team, the skill or awareness level of the enemy team, right? And, yeah, so stuff like the Disguise Kit and the Dead Ringer both can be heavily affected, their use can be heavily affected by, how aware or unaware the enemy team is. So this is just a generalization. This whole like list, I forgot to say that earlier. This whole list is more of a generalization of how effective weapons are in a given game rather than any sort of objective fact at all. Because I think, you know, weapon effectiveness also is very subjective based off of how good you are as a player. But yapping aside, yeah, I think the Disguise Kit's alright. It's B tier. It works like 50-50 half the time, you know. It gets you past sentries, it gets you past unaware teammates. Unaware enemy team. And, yeah, but against a team with, like, any awareness at all or decent pyro, it does absolutely nothing. It's also very, very glitchy still years later. It also needs to be buffed. Like, I think the disguises should have, you know, related class attributes and make each one individually worth using, right? But, yeah, as it is, it's just, like, putting on one of those, old-timey theater comedy mask and trying to just walk your way directly to the enemy teleporters and sentries. So yeah, it's gonna be a B tier for the Disguise Kit. I think it's perfectly serviceable. You know, it works most of the time, some of the time, like 50-50 pretty much, yeah. Next up is the Spy Sickle, which is a knife for spy. Basically what it does is that when you stab people, it turns them into ice statues, right? Whenever you have it out, excuse me if I stutter anything throughout this video, whenever you have it out and you get hit by flame particles, you get extinguished from those flame particles and you become immune to afterburn for 10 seconds. But you have to wait for, I think, a 30-second refill. Might be shorter than that, you know, obviously I don't have the stats pulled up. You either have to wait for a 30-second recharge time on the knife or pick up ammo to fill it up, which a single large ammo box fills it up. And I think it gets halfway or 1/3 with a medium ammo box, etc. So yeah, it's really good if you're trying to fight a team with a bunch of pyros, even though I don't really recommend playing Spy if you're fighting like more than 2 pyros to begin with, because they will hunt you down relentlessly. Especially if you're a spy playing defense and they're on offense, because they can respawn much quicker than you can even take advantage of the time of them being dead, you know what I mean? But Yeah, I think it's B tier. It's all right. It's like good for gun spy. It's good for if you're fighting a lot of pyros and stuff. Uh, although yeah, it is annoying to have your knife melt right when you're about to go for a backstab though, which is one of like the hidden downsides, I guess. That the theoretical downsides they don't really tell you about. So yeah, the spy circle goes right into B tier. Alrighty then, the next weapon on the list is going to be the kunai, which is definitely a lower B tier, even though I'm not really shuffling these around within the tiers. They're all relative to each other as long as they're within the same tier. But yeah, the kunai, it's really good if you're against unaware teams, but you really do need to use it as a chain stabbing knife to really get the ball going and try to actually take advantage of that health that you get from stabs, rather than just sitting on it or watching it deteriorate. That's like the sort of the tango you got to do to make the kunai good. Otherwise, it's like C tier because you're just nerfing your health and you just get one shot by a lot of things you normally wouldn't get one shot by, even with the other health reducing knife. So yeah, the kunai, yeah, that's literally it. I think it is definitely overrated, although it also definitely has its uses. But yeah, that's it. B tier. And right after the kunai, we have the dead ringer, which yeah, you could just fake your own death, or how 90% of spies actually use it. Just use it as a shield against damage and spam it immediately after it pops, so you can just get the speed boost and then run away. So yeah, it's B tier honestly. For the overpowered weapons that people usually put in like the meme tier or the annoying tier, which I understand completely, I'm gonna try to rate them as like non-biasedly as possible. Right? I'm just gonna rate them as they are and how they work, compared to everything else. And the dead ringer is definitely B tier. I do not think it's as good as stock cloak or cloak and dagger at all, because it kind of doesn't help spy with stealth. It's definitely more for the aggressive spy. I feel like trying to use it to actually get behind a team usually just results in you getting hunted down by a scout who heard the massively loud roaring decloak from his spawn. So yeah, it's gonna be B tier for the dead ringer. It's kind of mediocre, kind of mid. So the stock cloak. What do I think about stock cloak? I think it is perfectly serviceable for what it does, although I feel like it forces you to play a little bit too aggressively or a little bit too forwardly for being something that is intended to be a stealth weapon, right? Intended to be on a stealth class. I think you should be able to move at your own pace and be able to get things done as you see fit instead of being able to instead of being forced to move forward, because then you usually just get caught out by complete accident. And it's not a fun time, Also, I think stock cloak in general should be buffed. I think the damage resistance you get while cloaked should be better. I think it's 10 or 20% should be more around like half. Honestly, I think it should be harder to track down and kill cloak spies, and you should have a longer time in cloak. Maybe double the time from 8 to 16. I think that would really buff cloak, or maybe not 16, like 12 or 14, something like that. But yeah, you should be able to go at your own pace, and not be forced to take the Latranger, because you really are just putting yourself in like a disadvantage, I feel like, by using stock cloak compared to the cloak and dagger or dead ringer. But stock cloak is still going in A tier anyway, because it's a great utility. It can get you in and out of a combat situation. You just have to be very wary of the amount of cloak you have at that moment and try to pick up ammo packs as you go without alerting the enemy team in the process. So yeah, it's going to be A tier for stock cloak. The next weapon on the list is going to be the Diamondback, which basically it's a small damage penalty and no random crits in exchange for getting a stored crit every time you either sap a building or backstab somebody. So, being rewarded heavily for just doing your job, which is, yeah, there's a few weapons in TF2 that are like that, like the Frontier Justice, the flare gun. I don't really know why people signal out the Diamondback specifically when, it still takes miles more effort than building a sentry that gets at least one kill. or setting somebody on fire with the flamethrower, which is like the easiest primary to use in the entire game. But you know, that like hypocrisy rant aside, yeah, the Diamondback, right? You're basically just getting free crits for doing your job. So I'm gonna have to put it in A tier, not S tier, because you know it's nasty. You know, you shouldn't be using this weapon type of thing. You know, looked down upon. But functionally speaking, it is a really good weapon. It's a good weapon, okay? Like it has 0 honor, yeah, but it's a good weapon as long as you don't whiff the shot. If I could rebalance it, I think it would be something as simple as getting mini crits instead of full crits. So you would be doing like 88 damage, which is a little bit more than a full ramp up revolver shot, but also, you know, not crazy like 102 is. So yeah, it's gonna be A tier for the Diamondback. It's the real Stankmeister, you know. I don't condone this weapon, you know. I'm just trying to rate these without bias, like a lot of people would. All right, the Sapper, stock Sapper goes right into S tier for Sapper, you know. S for Sapper, it does exactly what it's supposed to. You know, you electrify buildings, and that's about it. Yeah. So good job for being a thing that exists, Sapper. You do your job. Yeah. All right. So for the stock knife, yeah, it just works. You know, it's a knife. You can stab people with it. It has no real upsides or downsides. You keep your full amount of health. You don't get your knife melted or anything whenever you're trying to stab people. You know, easy A tier. You know, it just works. I could maybe put it in B tier since it's stock. It doesn't really do anything different, but nah, A tier. Yeah, that's about it. But I honestly don't really recommend using stock knife over the unlocks, though, if I'm going to be honest. Just for the sake of gameplay variety, because fully stock spy is kind of a very miserable and boring experience, both. You know, you have to, I think unlocks are like, they make the class, like if everybody was forced to play stock spy, he would be literally not relevant at all. That's in my personal opinion. After, you know, playing TF2 for like a bajillion hours and stuff. So yeah, A tier for the good old stock knife. The stock revolver, which is just a solid damage dealer. That's it. You know, I think it's a revolver. You know, you could shoot people with it. You can also gun down sentries from a range. You could use it as a sort of long range sapper. Same with pretty much the other revolvers too, besides the ambassador, because of the weird spread the ambassador suffers, I feel like. So yeah, it's gonna be a solid S tier. You know, it's a good old fashioned, good old reliable damage dealer. And yeah, that's just the stock revolver. You know, it exists. All right, so the big earner. What do I think about the big earner? I think it's honestly, even with the minus 15 health penalty, I think it's honestly better than stock knife. You know, I don't really know if it's a hot take or breaking any ground, but you could get such nasty chain stabs with the big earner, even more than the kunai, even more with the your turner award, because the speed is just so, you know, rewarding. You really do earn a lot from it, and you can really get a lot done with it. Instead of the get one kill and then die every life, like you would with the stock knife, you can usually at least get, you know, 2 or 3 right after one after another usually, but usually get about 2 or 3 per life if you're the average casual spy instead of like dying instantly. So yeah, the big earner is going to be up in S tier. It is really good. You really do earn big from it. Alright, so the L'Étranger, which is a revolver that gives you bonus cloak, I think 30% bonus cloak when you have it equipped, and you get 15% cloak back whenever you shoot somebody with it, for the small price of you know, I think a 15% damage penalty, which is basically nothing because you're going to be getting kills with crits anyway. You know, you're going to be getting kills with crits with it anyway and doing chip damage, which you know, excuse me, I can't even like speak right now. Which is what you'd be doing as spy anyways, getting chip damage with your revolver, usually at least, you know. It's a finishing tool or chip damage. But yeah, what do I think about the L'Étranger? I think it's on the same level, if not better, than stock revolver, just from all of the upsides you get from it. And it's still really decent for combat too, you know? Honestly, it's usually the go-to pick for the primary slot, unless you're specifically playing gun or damage spy. And so yeah, it's gonna be S tier for the L'Étranger. And the last weapon on the list is gonna be the Cloak and Dagger. which is like stock cloak, but instead of running out through time naturally, it runs out the more you move, and you can refill it just by standing still. And what do I think about the cloak and dagger? I think it is what stock watch should have been. You know, it lets you play at your own pace. It lets you get picks when you want to get picks. Sure, you can play like a noob and sit in a corner, but I think Spy is best played that way. You know, maybe people who play like super aggressive Spy and get like crazy kill streaks by spamming Dead Ringer will disagree, because they obviously will. But I think Spy is best played when you're getting picks and doing stuff at your own pace and not being forced to act like you would with stock cloak, right? That's why I think it's so much better. It's also pretty much the de facto cloak for defensive Spy, as you can just sit behind the enemy lines and get picks or pick off engineers or snipers or medics, you know, people who are in the back line at that moment that you need to pick off. Which you can't really do that using Dead Ringer or stock cloak as defensive Spy unless they just really fall for disguises often. It's also good for gun spy, you know, troll spy, ghost spy, pretty much all the alternative playstyles besides regular roaming around and stabbing people. And it's also good at that too, but you have to have the Latrenger equipped, but you probably would anyway if you were using stock cloak, since stock cloak is almost unusable without it. So yeah, I think just for that, as our final weapon, the cloak and dagger deserves an S tier. Alrighty, and that was the tier list. You know, this is subjective, obviously. It might have a little bit objectiveness inside of it, just due to my, you know, raw playtime and experience. But that's just like my personal opinions of the weapons and everything. If you disagree, then I don't really care. You know, do your own thing. But yeah, I'm gonna put the tier list on screen right now. And yeah, I hope you guys enjoy this tier list. I hope you guys enjoy this video. And will join me next time for whatever random stuff I do. So yeah, I am out.